School Board public hearing with regard to the 2026 budget presentation. Any changes or amendments to the agenda? Anybody? Nope. Dr. Glaze, the floor is yours for the fifth time. on this topic. So,
Absolutely. Our last monthly meeting, we did go through this budget presentation during our work session. So we will briefly go through this again. And if there are any questions that come up, please don't hesitate to ask.
and for those people watching, where is this available?
This is available on, there's a website on the, I don't want to say where that is. Yeah, there we go. It is available on the budgetnotices.in.gov.
Okay,
So, and then you have to go in, you have to select the county and then select the taxing unit, which would be Tippecanoe Community School
gotcha.
Corporation.
Okay, thank
So
you.
all of that is available if you have any questions about that.
Perfect, thank you.
You bet, not a problem. We talked a little bit about the different pots of money and the different buckets of money because buckets of money are important, and Mr. Jaworski loves it when I call them buckets of money. And so we also talked a little bit about how the dollars flow. Once again, the money that goes into our education fund, which is how we directly fund each student, comes from state dollars, comes to us, and then there's some other add-ons that are part of those funds, and we'll talk more in depth with that in just a minute. So that those state dollars just come straight to us, and that's what is basically going into our education fund. And then we have the local property tax dollars, which are going into debt service and into our operations fund. So essentially what we're looking at, and this is just our potential revenue, and this is actually a little bit less than what we're anticipating now because our enrollment appears to be a little bit up. And so we'll have a little bit more dollars than what this initial plan shows, but that's a good problem to have. So right now we're looking at an education revenue of around 11,496,000 and an operation fund revenue of around 5,215,000, and then a debt service revenue of 4,871,000. And currently, based on a 75% of our AV, our rate would be a 1.9, so $1.09. Likely, that's going to be more in the 90-cent range, upper 80-cent range, once everything gets sorted out. Again, what we do, how we get this money, we have our average daily enrollment, which is due on October 1st. So whatever students are sitting in our seats, October 1st are the students that we can count. And so we will run that report, send that in, and hopefully those numbers will stick. One of the things that has an impact on our property tax dollars has the assessed valuation. We recently received our certified net AV, and was up about 1.2%. Again, not the numbers we've seen in the past or the last few years anyway. Actually, more like the numbers we saw prior to all this crazy assessed valuation increase. Indiana, basically the way that the funds are generated is basically it's based on statewide average income, circuit breaker, which we have around $600,000 of circuit breaker impact, and then we have the additional $276,000 that will be a new impact due to the additional homestead credit. Federal grants are added in, basically around $200,000 of Title I funds are also in addition to these funds, as well as some Title II, Title III dollars. Those are a much lower amount than what the Title I is. This is the run of the projected budget. This is kind of a nice thing that the General Assembly does for us. They give us the numbers, and then they allow this to go out to the schools so we can get a general idea of what we're looking at. from a funding perspective. So basically what we're looking at is a foundation grant. That's the basic grant that every student in the state gets. So our basic grant, foundation grant number is $6,981 per student. And then we have complexity index, and this really has a direct impact to our free and reduced lunch rate. And so we get an additional $500 per student for free and reduced. And then we get an additional $700 per student in statewide special ed funds, around 418 as far as the career technical education. And basically that comes from 30A funds. The 30A funds are primarily received from the high school students who are taking classes either at the Heinz Career Center or taking classes here where they're doing more of their pathway types of classes and the more advanced types of classes. So also the academic honors performance. This is for the number of students that we have that are graduating with an academic honors or a technical honors, students that are taking AP, students that are qualifying for dual credit. So there's a formula on how that works. And then we get around $14,000 or about $14 per student for non-English speaking. So a grand total of $8,700 per student. And what we do is we take that dollar and multiply it by whatever the enrollment is on October 1st, and that's what generates our education budget. The education fund primarily funds teacher salaries and benefits, also takes care of the principal office's salary and benefits, special programs, high ability, special education, summer school, CTE, remediation, instructional assistants, guidance counseling, nurses, speech pathology, classroom supplies and equipment, educational media services, curricular materials, and athletic, academic, and sponsor stipends. One thing that's a little bit different with the funding that we have this year is the $160 that each student gets as part of the curricular materials funding. That is included in that dollar figure. So it used to be a separate grant. Now it's included in the formula. So the education revenue, again, we get the basic foundation grant. We talked a little bit about complexity and the various other areas where we can get money. And then once again, in bold, we have the $160 that essentially has to be taken out because that's money has already been promised in order to pay curricular materials. Operation fund primarily takes care of transportation, capital projects, any kind of projects that we do on our own during the school year, central office staffing, utilities, custodial, maintenance staffing, property insurance, and then it also can be used to pay for bus replacement. But a couple of years ago, we funded our bus replacement with a GEO bond. Again, so the way the revenue comes in a little bit in operations. So we get of course our property tax, and then we get CVET, FIT, and excise tax. So the financial institution tax is the FIT. The CVET is the motor vehicle tax, and then we get excise tax also. Is that the motor vehicle? That's a commercial vehicle tax. Sorry about that. And then the excise tax comes from license plates. Funds are transferred from the education fund. We can transfer up to 15%. We have a relatively low percentage that we transfer. That is, of course, going to increase a little bit as we are looking at budget shortfalls due to SEA 1. Regardless of how much our AV grows, we can only increase our funds by 4%. That is the maximum growth that is allowable. And then the other part of it is, particularly with the debt service and with the operations fund, is they will be impacted by the property tax cap loss that we discussed a little bit earlier. Operation fund comparisons. As I shared last time, we're kind of in the middle as far as our operation fund. in our rate. And so we're at 45 cents for last year. Probably going to be fairly close to that this year, maybe a slight uptick, again, because of the VAV not changing much, but should be pretty close to that level. So once again, right in the middle. And the other part it would be, we wanted to draw a comparison to the couple of schools near us that have an operating referendum, and to share what the rate is for their operating referendum. Sheridan is at 25 cents, and Alexandria is at 32 cents. I believe Sheridan, I think it's only been a couple of years. I think when they did theirs. Alexandria, it was, I think, about 4 years ago. Because they also did a capital, it's an operations and capital referendum, so they did some renovations. And R.L. Turner did that. That's the only reason why I remember. So that, I believe so. Yes, I believe so. Debt service, again, this is where we pay for our lease agreements and rentals, general obligation bonds, and then any kind of associated fee. Again, we talked a little bit about the revenue before. Debt service comparison, we have a relatively low debt service rate compared to our neighbors. It goes all the way up to 75 cents as far as the max rate. We are at 39 cents currently. We anticipate that to kind of hover around that 40 cents range as we're getting everything approved and getting the certified rates rolling out. So overall tax rate, we are still very low in the overall tax rate, and even if our rate does go up a little, we'll probably not move much. So we are the second lowest rate in the area schools of 85 cents. So basically what we've tried to do with debt management, we have really tried to adopt this philosophy of maintaining a steady rate. Again, so you don't have anybody's tax bill going up and down and doing some crazy stuff. So we've tried to keep it relatively close to that. In '96, we had a little bit of a blip because the AV came out a little bit lower, and so it did pop that rate up. But as you can see in '23, when we had this huge increase in assessed valuation, it went back down to that upper 80% or that upper 80 cents. So essentially what we're talking about here is really how much revenue we get, including our operation fund. So each Tipton student, this is compared with operations and education, it's around $11,000 a student if you divide that by the number of students that we have. The state average is $11,130. Oh, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Is $11,002. So we are above the state average by a couple $100 per student, which is great. So we kind of are on the higher side of those dollars and what those dollars look like. And that's the revenue coming in. So again, we're above state average. 76% of our revenue comes from the state funding formula, and then about 24% of the revenue comes from local property taxes. So combining those two, we have 76 and 24. So our actual expenses, so once again, we try hard to not spend everything that we have. So our expenses are around $10,673, which again is on the top side of this graph. So again, we are getting a little bit more than state average, and we are spending a little bit more than state average for each of our students. So just kind of a deep dive. Again, we're above state average. 85% of those expenditures really per student are dedicated to staff salaries and benefits. That would include all staff. 5% of that is going to be transportation, 3% supplies and technology, 3% utilities, 2% purchase services, and then 1% insurance. So basically, the 6-year trend, and this is a little bit redundant, but it kind of gives it in a dollar figure. So as you notice, as we're looking at our total budget, you see some fairly decent increases, not so great in 21 to 22, but definitely nice increases 24 and 25. 26, of course, because of the impact of all this new legislation, is lowering that overall threshold just a little bit. Again, we are basing this on 85% of last year's AV. We anticipate that this will look a little bit different because we do have our AV now. And then the other part of that is we do, in case things get a little bit weird with how we do our tax draws, we do have an additional appropriation coming out of our rainy day fund, which is not a typical thing that we do. But that's just to make sure that we have cash flow. When taxes are reassessed, things get different. It sometimes can have a funny impact on how collections go. That's just my experience. So we just want to have that as a extra cushion in case we need it. Again, I've said this before that the increase between 25 and 26 is pretty small. But this increase also includes $160 per student for textbook or curriculum materials. And then, so really a total increase around $56,000. Our operation fund is actually $151,000 less than what it was this last year. And then education fund is a little bit on the positive side, around $5,541. Now, with the additional pupils, that's around $400,000. But once you take out the textbook adoption fees, or the curricular material fees, and then some additional fees that we are paying to be part of a KSIC, our special ed co-op, that ends up being about $127,000, which is better than $5. So that's really kind of the new money we have to play with as far as looking at teacher raises. Just to kind of talk a little bit about, electric bill. And again, I want to make sure that, our Tipton Utilities they've been great. They've been our good partners, and they've tried to ease into these increases. But, once again, it's just, increases happen, and we're appreciative of their work. But, when we're looking at how much our electric bill has increased, it's about 26% since 2022. And we're kind of on pace to have another 6.2% increase this coming year. Another thing, since I didn't anticipate buying buses, we did buy buses. We filled out a PO for those and used the remaining funds out of our GEO bond. But I did want to show you the difference in the price of buses from 2021 to 2025. And it's respectively the C2s are the regular bus that we all grew up on and rode, and the 84s are the flat-nosed buses. 41 and 40% increase since 2001. And I did want to clarify, because I did misspeak, this does include some tariff increases, which is $2,500. I think I said $20,000, which I apologize, that's not correct. And I do want to make sure that that is correct, but still, you never like to see things like that, kind of bumping the prices up, but it is. So again, inflationary pressures, in a time when we have less money, just really puts the corporation in a pretty tight squeeze. So we've talked about a little bit of staff reductions, and so we've saved $268,000 in staff reductions. However, we do have to transfer $250,000 out of the education fund into the operation fund to make up for what we've lost due to circuit breaker. We have reduced supply budgets. We've reduced our maintenance budgets, and we've eliminated several service agreements. We are about ready to go through another cycle of reducing and having conversation with our people about what do you need versus what do you want, and how to make all of that work. Now that the curricular materials are coming straight out of the education fund, it just puts a real strain on the education fund. And we try to keep those separate, and we want to keep those separate. But if there's a lot of cost, it's impossible to keep it separate. So we're trying really hard to do that. So just again, asking for people to help us out here, and I feel very confident that our staff will do that. This is kind of the reduction in staff that we've had over the last few years. And so we had the bus replacement plan and the capital projects plan. So the bus replacement plan that is actually advertised is different. All they really care about is the fact that we're going to we're going to buy buses. They don't really care about the number. They just want to see that there's a line saying we're buying buses. So we are going to buy 2 buses, and that is primarily because we have to spend all of the bond proceeds 3 years after the issuance. I thought it was 4. And so we had to kind of scramble a little bit, get the POs and get that money encumbered so that we could get the buses. So luckily, we are not looking at the lead time that we've had to look at during the pandemic, where we were like 18 months out. So they're about 6 months out. So we're actually going to be in pretty good shape as far as getting those buses in a timely manner so that we can spend the money at GeoBond. Again, if you're just dying to see more of this information, it's all right here. And this is more of the detail. This is the same documents that are on the state website, but this is a little bit easier format to pull them out of. And then if you're at home and you want to see the capital projects and all of our budget information, then you can go to budgetnotices.in.gov and select the county, and then select us as the taxing unit, Tippy Community School Corporation, and you can see everything that is in our budget for 2026. So with this, we would ask in the October meeting to approve the 2026 budget. And do you have any questions over that? It is mind-blowing stuff. I think we're good.
All right, so the next part of the agenda is public comment regarding the budget. There is nobody signed up, nor is there anybody else in the building, so just in the interest of transparency. So I would say before we move to adjournment, I'm speaking on behalf of the board, just thanking Brooke, and I'm sure Nate and lots of other little minions running around back there, and yourself and Scott for the work to do this. And a lot of hard decisions got made, and you've made this pretty seamless for us and easy. So just wanted to publicly acknowledge on the record that hard work, in addition to your other parts of your job, right? Brooke didn't get 2 weeks off to do this. So we really do thank you for that. And with that, if there's no other questions or comments, I would say we're in adjournment of the public hearing. All right.
Great.
See ya.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.